for that introduction. Thank you for the land acknowledgement, and it's nice to see you all. I'm going to hit the present in Teams button, and with any luck, it'll fire up, and you'll be able to see my slides. Takes a moment, but I can see the wheels turning. All right, fantastic. Can I get a thumb up from you, Aaron? You can see? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. All right, and so we begin, friends. Aaron, thank you for joining me. Maya, thank you again. Before we go any further, want to just acknowledge the incredible, consistent, and support that we receive as co-chairs of this committee, the support that we get from the Secretariat, and particularly Mary Elabizio, who is our coordinator. Clinical governance is a massive undertaking, and it really, really relies on the expertise of our Secretariat, and I'm grateful for the support we get from the Secretariat and from Mary. So Mary, if you're online, thank you for everything you do. So to get us started, I'm going to locate the cross-continuum committee within the framework that is our clinical governance. Some of this may be new to you, some of this might be really familiar to some of you, so bear with me for a moment. This is the model that I like to think many of you have seen before. And in that green square there, you see the cross-continuum committees and the subcommittees that support the ICGC, or the Integrated Clinical Governance Council, which as many of you know, is really our senior governance table, save for executive and the board and the ministry. So we report as a committee. Our terms of reference are shared by, and we report to the ICGC. But that said, I'll talk about our sister committees and such for in a moment, but I do want you to see the dotted lines. See how as a cross-continuum committee, we support our other committees and we support the local level and the care networks. When you think about the local level, when you see this graphic, I want you to think about the local level as like many orders of magnitude larger than it's being represented here, because that's the community we serve. That's all our people at the point of care. That's the majority. That's the 35,000 people in the organization, save for the few others in the other regional and organizational departments here. All right, so that said, there's the list, as you can see, of the other cross-continuum committees, our other sisters in this work. And so Aaron and I, as mentioned, have the real honor and pleasure of co-chairing the Clinical Education Cross-Continuum Committee. So this is a bit of a profile that we like to share to explain and answer these questions. And these slides will be available to you. These slides, or this information rather, is available on Advancing the Understanding, which some of you may have seen. It's the interactive model that explains clinical governance, available on the intranet. But that said, here's the answer to some of these questions. What does this committee do? Well, we assist in the workings of clinical governance, imagining that clinical governance, as you know, is about quality improvement initiatives, and that so many of those quality improvement initiatives have plans which include an educational component. So our role is to support that work. I'll talk to you in a few moments and share how we do that. But in addition, we also support resource ask. So if people, for instance, are looking for a resource and that they don't have, we may stand beside and support the ask. Now, what's important to note there is that doesn't mean we've got a cadre of people waiting for assignments, waiting to come and do this clinical education, because we don't. What we do have, though, is an organization, and you've probably heard Krista Allen say, or Kathy McNeil say, we have enough people, we just have to get them all sort of rowing in the same direction in the canoe. So that's what we do as a committee. How does that impact the point of care? Well, as you can see, quality improvement, quality initiatives, there's education all over that work. And, we all are committed, and I know many of you are, to assuring that incorporates best practice and design and implementation, evaluation. And so that's our role, is try to support that work. There's a list there of who we are right now. And we've got I think right now, a growing committee. We've started small. We've got some new people as part of our table. It's really exciting. And how do we do this? Well, there's a couple of tools there that this is I'm presenting in Teams, so you could click on those hyperlinks and see the two resources. The Developing a Learning Template is a resource many of you have probably seen. If not, I suspect you have something similar that you use to draft your learning efforts. And so there's a CLICS resource that we share, and the intake form. So to access our committee, you'd go through the clinical governance structure, connect with the secretariat, or it comes to us from a care network, or however it comes via Teams or email, what have you. But when it gets to become a formal encounter, we will share with you this intake form. And you can think of the intake form as a series of questions, or a filter, if you will, through which we, us, look at the work and ask questions like, who have you spoken to? Is this aligned to, for instance, an organizational priority? How will you evaluate? What kind of engagement strategy do you have? What kind of implementation strategy? Just the questions that would be answered, for instance, in a learning template, and then some. Because again, our role is to try to enhance this work. And so that's the two resources right now we have sort of specifically in our toolbox. So let me share an example that, as you can see here, one of our first asks was to support infection prevention and control. And specifically, they have a accreditation requirement to educate, and that education on hand hygiene, and that education needs to be tracked. So there's sort of two pieces there, but the ask here that I'll talk about now was the tracking. How can they track their work? And so we've been working with them on ways to do that. Emphasis on the word ways there, because it turns out it's complicated. So I'm going to share a couple more slides, and then I'll stop screen sharing and we can come back to the slides and have conversation. So two other examples of our work. We were asked to support eMERGE services and the eMERGE Care Network because they were interested in standardizing their orientation. And so initially it came as a different ask, but we were able to sort of separate some things out and focus on this component of the work. And that work is ongoing, and we're excited to support that. And the next item that some of you may also be familiar with is this business of restraints for youth in our organization. And so again, here, the way in which we supported that I'd highlight here is they needed resource. And so we supported their ask to leadership to get that resource. And so that was, again, our way of standing beside. Last slide now. What are we up to? So all of the tables in clinical governance, also in addition to doing their work, as it were, also have to sort of identify their work plan. And so these are the things on our list of things to do that we've been asked to do or that have popped up from our terms of reference or since we've been up and running. As you can see, the top thing was we really need in our organization, and probably we need this provincially, to really declare what do we mean by mandatory or required education. And similarly, once we declare that, well, how are we going to track that? Of course, the next step would be like, so what about that? Which is out of our scope. But right now we are working on criteria that might be used to define how would something become mandatory or required, for instance. We've were asked and needed to expand our membership, which we've started. We have less started the next one, which is to say this idea of creating kind of a way in which education in our clinical education is approached in our organization. Not necessarily a one size fits all, although likely there will be templates, but really a principle-driven approach to incorporate best practices sort of across the learning continuum in time and space. We have sort of continued to refine our intake and review processes, socialize who we are, what we are. So really happy to have this time together. As things continue to add to our list, we have identified the need to come up with a prioritization process, and something real new for us that we've been asked to support infusion pump training. As some of you may know, that was a item that Accreditation Canada in our last survey asked us to support. So early days on that one. We don't have a formal plan yet, but please know that efforts are on the way for that. So that's the end of the slides. That's the end of me just delivering content. I would just say thank you. It's exciting work. It's new and different for all of us. So really happy to answer questions. Again, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I'll stop there.
Thanks, Darren. I'll take a moment just to pause the recording and invite everyone who feels comfortable